So we think that these higher dimensions are all around you, in your body, in your living room.
3 dimensions of reality. A dimension is a measure of spatial extent. Matter and space have 3 dimensions: length, width, and height. All objects possess a 3-dimensional shape. There are no objects in reality which can be said to be 0D, 1D, 2D, 4D, 5D, etc. All real objects, without exception, are 3D. It is impossible to show a picture of anything with more or less dimensions than 3. Lower and higher dimensions are impossible to imagine. But wait a minute, some might say, what about a piece of paper? That looks pretty flat in 2D, doesn't it? But no, that's wrong. A piece of paper, like everything else, is 3-dimensional. The paper is made of 3D atoms, and those atoms are made of even smaller 3D particles, and so on and so forth, ad infinitum. 11 dimensions of fantasy. It is very clear that the world we live in is 3-dimensional. But unfortunately, modern physics has now abandoned this common sense, 3-dimensional Euclidean space, in favor of Minkowski's 4D spacetime. This was a highly irrational move to make, which was not based on any logic or evidence, but strictly on abstract mathematics. For example, string theory claims that there are 11 dimensions and that everything is composed of 1D strings. Is this rational? Does this make any sense? No, obviously not. An 11-dimensional or 1-dimensional shape cannot even be imagined. It is nothing but gibberish. And the same goes for 0-dimensional point particles. How can a 3D atom be composed of 0D particles? If something had 0 dimensions, then it would be nothing. Obviously, that is impossible, and hence the particles that comprise the atom must necessarily be 3-dimensional. A singularity is also impossible because these entities are likewise claimed to be 0-dimensional or infinitely dense. The fantasy of 4D spacetime. But now let's get back to the subject of Minkowski spacetime. It is claimed that the concept of time is somehow a 4th dimension of space. The word dimension is often used very sloppily, but if defined more rigorously, then the concept of dimension can only refer to the length, width, and height of matter and space. Dimension is a spatial and morphological concept, whereas time is a measurement of motion. Motion is the changing locations of matter. Time and dimension have nothing to do with one another, and hence it is highly illogical to claim that time is a dimension. The tesseract is supposed to be the 4-dimensional analog of a cube. Really? Because this image looks rather 3D to me, not 4D. Besides this, it's also claimed by some that we could potentially create shortcuts through space by ripping an extra-dimensional wormhole through it. Many sci-fi movies have made use of this idea that wormholes can be made through space. Very entertaining, of course, but it's pure fantasy and nothing else. First of all, does space have the same kind of qualities as the matter that occupies it? Obviously not. You can't manipulate space in the same way that you can manipulate a physical object. If you can't truly interact with space, then you certainly cannot rip a hole through it, extra-dimensional or otherwise. It makes no sense. Conclusion: extra dimensions and lower dimensions are unimaginable, and there is no evidence to support them, nor can there ever be. Occam's razor clearly supports the 3-dimensional Euclidean view of the universe. What you see is what you get. The universe consists of 3-dimensional objects that occupy an infinite 3-dimensional space. There is no reason to think otherwise.